We are happy to announce that this episode of the SWW show is partially brought to you by Humble Bundle. Well, not really. We are part of the Humble Bundle referral program, and we just wanted to say that if you like really cheap games and maybe helping charity pending the Humble thing going on, all you have to do is go to humblebundle.com/partner equals SWW. That's right, humblebundle.com/partner equals SWW. And you just do your normal stuff, and it just kind of helps us get a couple bucks here and there. Maybe it helps AJ get his lights, maybe it's Mike camera, maybe we actually pay Corey for helping us out. But again, if you're going to go buy games anyway, it might be worth checking out. Hello everyone, and welcome back to these interview episodes of the SWW show. I'm Mike. Today with me a special guest from, I'm not quite sure. To get us started, do you mind introducing yourself and the game we're here to talk about?
Yeah, I'm Silas Reinigal. I work with Team Enigma Dragons, and we're currently developing a party-based science fiction card battler called Metroplex Zero.
So I want to start this kind of new thing I want to talk about in these interviews. My initial look is it looks like this is you guys' first game, at least on Steam. Do you have a history of game development, or is this kind of like your first professional project?
That's a great question. So we've actually built a lot of different games. There's a lot of we've done a ton of game jams and a lot of non-commercial games. And also on Steam, we've got a puzzle game called Bit Vault, which is there. It's set in the cyberpunk universe also, and it's a very elegant puzzle game that's very challenging. It has just a few rules, but it tests deep gameplay. Bit Vault is something to check out.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, no, that's I did not catch that yet, because I was looking at least on your under Enigma Dragons, at least I think is the only one. But okay, great. So let's jump into.
You should send me the link to that. Maybe I can check out and see if there's something that's mistagged.
It could be. It might be. All I did was check. I might have checked your publisher tag versus your developer tag. That's possible. No, on Steam. I am sending this to you. You could check when you want later. When you check your developer tag, that's all that pops. But it could be. So again, Steam's backend. As we like to say, Steam's a fun beast, as anyone would like to tell you. We all love and hate it, so it happens. But yeah.
That's wild. You're right. That is how it's showing up. That's so... Oh, it looks like there's this... It has LLC one time and not LLC the other. So, yeah, okay, we'll get that addressed. That's pretty odd. That's an interesting quirk.
Yeah, Steam is fun. But yeah, let's talk about then Metroplex Zero. So as you said, it's a team-based card battler.
Yes.
I want to start with we've seen this rise of like card games in the last couple of years, right? So like roguelikes seem to be like the big common thing for card battlers in recent times. Or obviously if you're the big ones like collectible card games, right? Well, this team-based twist, I feel like, is a little more unique-ish, kind of. Then I'm not a ton of games I think of for it. Where did you guys kind of come up with this idea for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess I've been doing card games for a long time, and I've even played cards competitively back TCGs back in the day when they weren't all digital, and you actually have to use to fly places for tournaments. So I had a lot of experience with that. And it's been interesting for me to watch the way kind of the card gaming world's like evolved. Actually, Hearthstone killed the game that we were playing. We were playing World of Warcraft cards. And when Blizzard sold the license, they were starting to do Hearthstone. They actually revoked the license for World of Warcraft trading card game. And Hearthstone sort of replaced it, but it was a totally different kind of a game. And I think Hearthstone in some ways was signaled the advent of like digital trading card games. But it's focused on, it's a multiplayer centric, first of all, as opposed to a single player kind of game. And it's very board based. A lot of the popular card games are very board based. So you have creatures that go onto the table, and then that's how you focus a lot of the fighting. And it was sort of interesting with Slay the Spire. They were another big genre innovator. They sort of flipped that formula a little bit. So there were several people in the trading card competitive space, and even Magic started to go more and more online. And then Slay the Spire was like, hey, what if we took are during the game building your deck up from a simple starter deck, and then the cards you add change the way your deck consistently plays until you eventually reach the end. And so Slay the Spire said, hey, what if we did a single player deck building game? And that one, that idea caught on like wildfire. Like people loved it. It was something that was totally different, and that brought some of the fun of card gaming to a lot of players who like hadn't had a lot of experience, or people who hadn't played some of the expensive card games before. So that sort of made that open to a whole new market. And I was looking at that and then thinking in the back of my brain, I was like, hey, you know what else can be in this single player card battling space? One thing I loved from the realm of TCGs and CCGs was the deck building aspect. Back in the tournament days, we'd spend weeks, months like crafting the perfect deck and playtesting it before we brought it to a tournament. And there was something really cool about that, trying to figure out like what is the meta game? How do I beat these other players? Like how do I put together a really cool combo in my deck? And in some ways, from that element, Slay the Spire was a step backwards. Again, they were innovating a new space. But with the deck builder, like you don't have that ability to kind of customize. And so that was an idea in the back of my brain, is like what happens if you get some of the customization that you have in Magic or Hearthstone, but you've got this single player gameplay and maybe even this this kind of more RPG style battle system instead of the board centric battle system. So there was another game that kind of really popped this idea in my brain, which it's an indie game. It's not as popular, but it's fantastic. It's called Hand of Gilgamesh. It's by Image and Form. They'd done a couple other fantastic games with SteamWorld Dig, if you've heard of that.
I love SteamWorld Dig and SteamWorld Heist. The SteamWorld games were definitely my jam for a couple years.
Yeah, so they did fantastic, and they had an interesting foray with Hand of Gilgamesh. Did you play Hand of Gilgamesh?
I can't say I have. I think I've heard of it. Now that you've said that, I think I've heard of it, but it definitely was not like a thing that was like fully on my radar.
So yeah, it was interesting. What I love about Image and Form is the fact that they kind of had their own little world, but they were like playing in that space. They're more old school kind of game developers. So they tried, like SteamWorld Dig was their first big popular title, but then they did another one, SteamWorld Heist, which was they asked themselves, what happens if we have a game that's like XCOM, a strategic game like XCOM, but we did it kind of from the side view, and it's a little more, I guess that's the key difference, is it's from the side view.
So I called this. So just to clarify, if everyone is looking for it, it's SteamWorld Quest - Hand of Gilgamesh. So I have heard of that. I just did not hear it ever referred to it by itself before.
Gotcha. Yes, SteamWorld Quest Hand of Gilgamesh. Are you still there?
Yeah. Yeah, that's very fascinating, kind of. So I'm kind of curious. So let's jump into, as we said, kind of. So that part. The part I'm curious about, kind of, I think we haven't touched in is so games like collectible card games, right? One of the things says customization is a big one, and earning the cards is a big one, kind of. How are you guys kind of going through that kind of fun process of like because you guys obviously, I'm assuming, just being that you guys aren't doing the like I open up a pack and I pay real money for it. So how's that kind of balance kind of going into it versus like this pure randomness that we kind of really have in real life with these kind of card games?
Yeah, that's a great question. Going kind of connecting the dots. Hand of Gilgamesh, what they did was they put a party in there, but it's more of a long form RPG. So it has cards. And you get eventually 5 heroes. 3 of them are in the combat at the same time, and you slowly buy cards throughout the adventure. But it's a very long adventure. Playing all the way through is probably 20 to 50 hours for a run. So you're slowly getting new cards, and they scale with your heroes. So as your heroes' stats go up, the cards' power go up. What we thought is there is an interesting bit, because it's a really fun game, but it doesn't have a lot of replayability. So one of the one of the ideas we thought is, what happens if we combine that roguelike sort of gameplay with the interesting hero compositions that you can have in a party? And so in Metroplex Zero, in the adventure mode, you have your starter deck. And so you start out, you pick your couple here, 2 or 3 heroes, and you're starting your adventure. And so you shuffle those 2 together. So each hero's got 12 cards. And so if you've got 2 heroes, you got 24 card deck. You shuffle those decks together, and then you start playing with that. And the interesting bit about the heroes is you can kind of build these like synergies. You're like, I'm going to have maybe a damager and maybe a tank, like, so they can kind of bounce off each other, and you don't get your party just destroyed. Or you're like, maybe you have an affliction mage who's doing a lot of damage over time effects, and somebody else to kind of power them up, give them resources, and keep the enemies from doing like big plays. So you get some interesting party like configuration type of deals. And during the adventure, in the conventional roguelike fashion, you will add cards to your collection. So you win a battle, you get a brand new card, and then you can deck build with that card before your next fight. So you just got that. You look at your heroes, you're like, hey, I want to bring this one for this fight. And one thing that makes that kind of different is it's not just forcibly thrown in there like in a deck builder. In Slay the Spire, when you get a new card, like it's stuck in your deck, and your deck becomes more diluted. So you have 5 cards, 6 cards, 10 cards, 20 cards. With the customization aspect that we've got going on in Metroplex Zero, you get to pick what 12 cards you bring for every hero every fight. So you got a new card that is going to overall increase your deck power. You put that in there and you take out a weak card. But you also can do something interesting. Let's suppose you've got a really niche card. Like, this is really good against particular enemies, but maybe not most of the time. You can pick that, and it actually might be really useful if you see an enemy that card's useful against. Like, you bring an anti-stealth card against a couple assassins. You can pop that in for that one fight against those assassins, and then afterwards take that card right back out because maybe you don't want it in your standard build. So this enables some things that you can't really do in a lot of the Slay the Spire-like games, because with those, you can't take cards out without having them permanently gone, or put them in without having them dilute your deck. And so that's the flow, is you get the roguelike feeling of you're collecting as you go, and you get the customization feel of you get to tweak your deck before every battle. Does that kind of answer?
Yeah, no, that kind of good. So
paradigm?
It leads to an interesting, I don't know, problem or dilemma there, right? Of if you're a player, right? So you said it's 12 per hero. There's always those 2 types of players, because like I know like Pokemon's one I know that like has a set 60 card deck, where like
yes.
Yu-Gi-Oh has like a 40 to a 99. So you always have those 2 types of players, right? The super competitive like 40 versus like the other side that's like I have 99 cards and I just put in my want, or like I'm pretty sure Magic I think has a no cap. I'm kind of curious kind of why you guys went for the like. In that spectrum, you went for the Pokemon route of like this set number, and like even if you recommend players having a certain amount, why was that decision made to force players to have a certain amount?
That's a great question. And part of this goes to card gaming background. What we saw was like in Magic the Gathering, for example. I think that one's a 70 card deck.
I thought Magic
a minimum.
Maybe it's a minimum. Maybe it's a minimum. That's what it is. I thought Magic had something where there was no cap, or at least certain modes had no cap.
There's no cap, but what we noticed is almost anybody who was bringing more cards, it was almost always a mistake. Like, not 100% of the time, because there's some weird cards that like they say if you have 100 cards in your deck. So they did a couple interesting things that changed that, but in general, anybody who brought more than that, they were just doing that because they'd been lazy, not because it was actually good for them or their gameplay. And in fact, that decreased consistency meant the math on their resources was off. They couldn't use some of the more standard templates for resourcing. So what we're trying to focus on in the gameplay is we want the strategic choices players are making to be the fun choices. Like, do I want to shield myself or blast this enemy or stun this enemy? Mathematical amount of lands and blend of lands for my particular cards. And people built complex tools, but that was it didn't really add to the fun. Like, you could shoot yourself in the foot by building your deck wrong. But if you built your deck correctly, then you're focused on the correct gameplay choices. And we just wanted to remove that. We didn't want people to be able to shoot themselves in the foot that way. So if you bring the wrong cards, that's on you. But we didn't want to have it you accidentally nerfed yourself by bringing the wrong composition of cards. And that's why we picked exactly 12, because that means that you're making intelligent choices about what you want your heroes to be doing, but you're not directly focused on how many cards and such. That was a decision point and a class of mistake. We just wanted to cut away from the game so that nobody can make that kind of a mistake.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and it is always that interesting kind of combo back and forth. That's why even, like, if you look at the big card games, well, no one quite agrees on the rules, because, as you said, there at least is that. But, like, yeah, I also agree with what you're saying is, like, Magic and even Yu-Gi-Oh!, you see that, like, there really is a set number you should have 99.9% of the time, but, like, there's always an option, though, and that's why I find it interesting, kind of, that, like, that you kind of took that option. The other thing,
I think the other thing is taking out that option changes our design space of we don't have to, think about creating cards that say, actually, this is a weird thing. So even when it's fixed, it's never really fixed. Hearthstone, for years and years, it was 30-card deck. That was the rule. They actually did a really weird thing in the latest set where there's a character, if you put Prince Renathal into your deck, suddenly your starting health changes from 30 to 40. And your deck size changes to 40 cards from 30. So they kind of even broke their own rule. It was exactly fixed. You were allowed to have exactly 30 cards. But because it's an exception-based card game, they're like, well, if you put in this card, then you can have 40. So it's one of those things that you can even, in a card game world, you can break your own rules as designers if you want to. So some of the question is, what are the interesting design spaces you want to play with? And at least for the first version of Metroplex Zero, we didn't want to mess with that kind of card because we could get fancy in that realm, but we wanted to focus more on the core gameplay of, like I dodged this big attack, or I've got this shield, but you stuck me with this damage over time, so the shield doesn't help me against that damage over time effect. That really interesting counterplay that's not even exactly rock, paper, scissors, because there's more defensive options than 3, and more ways to attack people. That
makes a lot of sense. The other thing I want to touch on, and it seems like your lack of cards might have kind of naturally solved this. So a big thing in card games, and in both physical form and digital form, and even like we said, Slay Spire stuff, is there are a lot of cards that basically let me go search my deck or whatever for a certain type of card, or okay. As I was saying, so there's a lot of card games in like both physical and digital space that like let me search for cards or a type of card, kind of. I was kind of curious if you guys thought of experimenting with that or experimenting with that, because obviously you have a way lower card count, but there's still those moments where like I'm like I need this card like now. So like I was played Pokemon for years, and like it was a 6-card deck. And legitimately, you'd have competitive games where 30 of those cards are just cards to search for the cards, because when you need a card, you need it. Like, it's kind of like that thing.
So that's a fantastic question. Oh, yes, we have played in that space, because sometimes you do actually want to play something or recur something. What we've got with our heroes is every hero's got 2 archetypes. If you played like Pokemon, you got your colors, you got your fire and your water, you got your elements, I guess they're called. You have your elements, and most decks are like a 2-element deck. Like that's usually a pretty good kind of build. You could throw in more. And Magic's the same way. They have 5 colors, and you can blend those however you like, but you'll have a harder time if you put in more colors. What we've got is heroes that have 2 archetypes. So you've got somebody who they've got like Arcana and Affliction. So they're doing magic in the cyberpunk world, kind of like Shadowrun. You've got somebody else, they're using like rifles and grenades. We've got one hero. Actually, we've got an archetype called Scheme. And Scheme actually does have some tutors. It's got a card where you can play this and then you search your deck for a specific archetype. Like you can find a stealth card if you play the Scheme Stealth tutor, and there's one tutor that allows you to look anywhere in your deck or discard pile for a single card and put it in. So we have a little bit of tutoring, but it only really applies to that particular hero primarily. So when you're playing that hero, you are playing more of that. I want to like do specific things at the cost of. I'm not doing as many things, but I'm picking what I do more specifically. We've also got this mechanic called card cycles, where you get to. If you have a card cycle, you can discard a card in your hand and redraw a card. for that card cycle without costing you an action. And so there's some level of manipulation, but only in those two particular classes. If you're playing other classes, you're not really messing with that kind of gameplay at all. But if you're playing Scheme, that's kind of what you like to do, is you're like, I'm all about manipulating and setting this cool one big play up, as opposed to a more bruisery style or aggro style where you're like, I just want to be coming out of the gate blazing with damage.
Well, that's very interesting and a very fun kind of problem solving there. So I gotta ask you, because I'm assuming you play the game a bunch, kind of testing and kind of, what is your kind of favorite combo to kind of play? Like, I know you said you pick 2 heroes, kind of, so what is your go-to kind of strategy in this?
Well, that's a good question. I think it changes. So as we're developing, like, the balance shift. So I'm loving playing one assassin and then one sort of support. I want a support to be fending off what the enemies are doing while my stealth assassin's getting ready to take people out. Stealth is super fun right now. We're working on a brand new mode, draft mode. So the normal adventure, you start with your starter deck and you progressively get more cards. But this past couple weeks, I was working on draft mode where you draft your entire deck up front. And then you just play it and you don't get any more cards through the run, and you have to have a deck that can handle all the enemies. And yeah, I played 2 stealth runs with the draft mode, and I was just having the greatest time. Like, yeah, there's some super fun combos. I don't know if you follow our Twitter, but I posted a little video of a card that we tweaked last week, Domino. And with that, it allows you to, if you kill off an enemy, you get to go back into stealth for free and draw a new card and get one more card play. So that's an interesting kind of way to approach. Like, normally you'd need area of effect, like a grenade, to hit a lot of enemies. But with Domino, as long as you can keep killing enemies with single hits, you can wipe out a whole bunch in a row. And that was super fun. People loved it on social media on Saturday. And that's what I've been having fun with the last couple weeks. But it changes. It changes, different patches. I'm excited about different elements of our heroes. So it's a big play space.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And mine's something, so obviously as we're talking, you guys aren't publicly really out yet. You're at the fun phase where it sounds like you have like a closed testing going and like internal testing.
Yes.
I'm kind of curious, kind of what is your guys' testing strategy? Because obviously when you change cards, every card is like its own variable. Are you guys purposely like only changing a card at a time and then waiting a day or two? Or are you guys like really just kind of, the days you go and you're like, we changed 10 cards, and we're just not telling them and just seeing what changes?
So we have patch notes. Anytime we make a change, we're going to announce that to all of our current players. And actually, it's pretty cool that we're doing this podcast. I don't know when it's going to air, but we're actually doing our second alpha playtest, and we're allowing signups for that, and that's in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, July 25th through 31st, we'll be doing our playtest number 2, and we'll actually probably have a competition. We'll set up a competition, and the players who complete the given challenge, they'll be entered for like a Steam gift card. So it's a fun way to not only get to play the game early, but also to try to challenge the game in a particular way. We make, since we're still in alpha, we're making medium-ish changes. Like, we got the core gameplay loop, and it's feeling really good, and we've got a lot of feedback from streamers and players that they're liking it. But we're still kind of refining the enemies a bunch, and then we're tuning the card sets to make sure they're really fitting together really nicely. Like when I was playing that stealth, they're supposed to. So I reworked those 3 cards, but the rest of the set, there's 18 stealth cards that I was looking at. The rest of them all stayed because they were feeling really great. They were doing exactly what I wanted. So the cards are getting pretty close to exactly what we want, and some of the other elements we're tweaking the balance to get the enemies feeling just right, so that they give you enough challenge, but not decimate you nor be too easy.
That is one of those things where it's a fun balancing act. I can only imagine, because again, you set up a system where. Because, like, in a shooter, right, it's like, oh, I switched the bullet damage and bullets. Where you're like, I have literally 10,000 unique variables, and any of them... Like, And there's always the player problem of players are really good at addressing a problem, but horrible at figuring out a solution.
That's true.
So players can be like, this is too strong, and everyone's like, great. And all the designers like, I don't know what that means. That could mean one of 50 things. Does he have too much health? Does it feel too... Like, what does too strong mean? But, like, a player's really good at addressing, like, hey, this is... Something's wrong. And then you really gotta just dig in and go.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's interesting regarding kind of that brokenness. You're right. Players are very, very good at finding problems in the game, but they're not... what they propose as the solution usually won't work for some number of reasons. I discovered yesterday, we had a stream yesterday after the... actually, this wasn't related to the rebalance, but another player was playing Stealth and Scheme. They're playing Alexi, who, like I mentioned, is one of my favorite heroes at the moment. But they found this really broken combo. They were able to... There's this card that if you're Stealth, it will give you extra attack. And then on the Scheme side, there are a couple cards that let you cycle a number of cards based on your current attack. So they created this loop where they were increasing the number of card cycles, cycling through their deck, and playing the same card twice. It was a really, really interesting engine they built. So I was looking at that, and I was like, most everything was functioning the way I wanted. They actually lost the run because one time the enemy took them out of stealth, and then they got destroyed because that was pretty critical to that whole engine. But I noticed there's just two things that I wanted to tweak. And number one is, like, I don't think you should be allowed to play your whole deck more than once per turn. So if you already discarded a card this turn, you shouldn't be allowed to redraw that same card until next turn. So it might be fine, in theory, to go through your whole deck and pick 3 cards to play from it during one turn, but you shouldn't be able to play the same card twice. That's a lot like in some physical deck builders like, let's see, Mystic, Veil, or Dominion. Once you've played a card, it sits on the table until the end of the turn. And the second bit was there was this accidental scaling factor where the amount of attack it increased was based on the amount of attack something more sane. So it's interesting, like seeing the small holes, like almost everything was working, and that the idea of the engine was good, but it was too powerful because of those slight ways that the player was able to exploit that. And that was interesting because nobody else had done that particular combo before. So it was very cool to see the way they created a combo engine.
That's very interesting and a fun problem that, you probably never realistically caught on your own, because it takes someone looking at this externally being like, I want to try this. And it's something that, like, half of them never thought of.
I'd done a slightly weaker form of that because I'd played one copy of that attack buff card where it was sneaky, but I hadn't played 2 copies. If you play 2 copies in the same turn, it has an exponential effect. And that was the part I'd never seen before. I was like, wow, I did not know it worked that way, because you create these rule sets, but sometimes the interactions, you might see interactions in that space that you never encountered before that other players discover.
Wow. But yeah, so let's end this kind of the fun way that I know you're prepared for, kind of. So as we're talking, the game is, we said, in this testing phase.
Yes.
Is there any ETA or any estimated release date, kind of like when this game will be coming out to the actual public, like end of the year, 2023, like any of that stuff?
Ooh, that's a fantastic question. So that's where I'd like to have this, marketing hat that tells me, like, it's going to come out on February of 2023 or something. But then there's 2 problems with that. Number one is we've seen, like, a lot of backlash for game developers putting out release dates, and then it gets delayed and everybody's mad. Like we saw that with CD Projekt Red. They got so much flack for pushing Cyberpunk 2077's release date. And then when they finally said, hey, we have to ship this, we can't push this anymore, then they got flack because the game had a lot of bugs and people felt it wasn't ready. So they kind of like got themselves shot both ways. The second bit is a card game like this is very community, like, feedback centric, of when the players are feeling they're excited about it and they're feeling the gameplay is just right, like that's when we know the game's actually ready for launch. What I can say is we'll probably have early access late this year or early next year. But for the actual final 1.0 release, like, that's going to be sort of once the players are feeling like, hey, this is really fun and this is really well tuned. That's the bit, because when you're in a game with this many cards and that many variables, you're right. There's going to be some brokenness and some rough edges until you polish those by discovering them, and you can only do that via time and feedback. So I don't want to have something released that's horribly imbalanced. That's one of the key goals to avoid, that has lots of bugs or it's horribly imbalanced. And so I can't say when the 1.0 will be out.
Perfect. No, that makes a lot of sense. So we will keep an eye out for this.
If people want to have the game out faster, they should come join the playtesting and give us their feedback. We're trying to build the card gamers game here. So the more feedback we get from hardcore card players, the sooner we'll be able to have this thing perfect.
All right, well, I want to say thank you, Silas, for coming by on the show and talking about the game. Again, the game is Metroplex Zero, Sci-Fi Card Battler. Check it out on Steam. Wishlist it. Go sign up for that testing. And best of luck on finishing development.
Thanks so much, Mike. It's been an absolute pleasure hanging out and talking cards with you for a while.
The SWW show and all of its affiliate podcasts are podcast by me, Mike Maroney, and AJ Losi, sometimes by contributors, including Corey King. You can follow the SWW show on social media at the SWW show, or sooner or later you go to patreon.com/SWW to help us out. Thank you. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day.